We are thrilled to bring you another comprehensive breakdown of your favorite storylines, focusing on the incredible resilience of love in the face of danger. Let us jump right into the heart-pounding action and heartwarming romance that define this incredible saga. Jacob's decision to keep the true nature of his undercover mission an absolute secret was not made lightly. It was a choice born of profound love and a desperate, overwhelming need to shield Naomi from the dark, treacherous underworld he was about to enter. He knew with absolute certainty that the less she knew about his daily activities, the safer she would be from the ruthless individuals he was tracking. This was not just a matter of strict professional protocol dictated by his superiors. It was a deeply personal vow to keep the suffocating darkness of his assignment from touching the radiant light of his life. The criminal ring he was tasked with dismantling was notorious for its extreme violence and its horrific tendency to target the loved ones of law enforcement officers. By keeping Naomi completely in the dark about the immense danger of his mission, Jacob was effectively building an invisible, impenetrable fortress around her, even if it meant he had to endure the agonizing pain of isolation and the heavy weight of his own deception. When Jacob finally packed his bags to leave, the excuses he provided to Naomi were plausible but ultimately hollow, leaving a lingering, uncomfortable chill in the air of their shared home. He walked out the front door carrying not just his physical gear, but an immense, crushing psychological burden that threatened to suffocate him. The silence that immediately followed his departure was absolutely deafening for Naomi. She was left behind in a house that suddenly felt far too large, incredibly empty, and devoid of the warmth he always brought to it. Every creak of the floorboards and every passing car outside amplified her growing, gnawing anxiety. She understood the demanding nature of his career, but this time the veil of secrecy was noticeably thicker, and the unsaid words between them felt incredibly heavy. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a palpable, terrifying fear that something was fundamentally different and infinitely more dangerous about this particular assignment. The only fragile lifeline connecting their two vastly disparate worlds became a series of cheap, disposable burner phones. For Jacob, these small plastic devices were both an absolute blessing and a terrifying curse. They represented a massive security risk that could easily compromise his cover, yet they were the only thing tethering him to his sanity in a gritty world built entirely on lies, manipulation, and violence. He had to be incredibly meticulous and paranoid, purchasing the phones with cash in random, out-of-the-way convenience stores, using them for only a few brief, precious moments before destroying them completely and moving on to the next location. The logistics of maintaining this secret communication were an absolute nightmare, requiring him to slip away from the watchful, suspicious eyes of the syndicate members, finding isolated alleys or abandoned, decaying buildings where he could steal a few seconds to dial the only number that mattered to him. When the burner phone would finally ring in Naomi's hands, her heart would instantly leap into her throat, a physical reaction to the sudden surge of adrenaline and hope. The conversations they shared were agonizingly brief, often masked by heavy, crackling static and the distant, unsettling sounds of an unfamiliar, dangerous city. They knew they could not speak freely. Instead, they had to rely on a carefully constructed, improvised code to convey their feelings and his status. While Naomi battled her escalating anxiety at home, Jacob was fighting a brutal war on two entirely different fronts. Externally, he was navigating a complex, deadly labyrinth of deceit, embedding himself deeper and deeper into the criminal organization, memorizing faces, gathering crucial evidence, and constantly watching his back for any sign of betrayal. He knew that one simple slip of the tongue, one misplaced glance, or one moment of hesitation would cause his cover to be blown, resulting in certain, immediate death. Ashley did not offer empty platitudes or false, unrealistic promises about Jacob's safety. Instead, she offered a dedicated listening ear, a sturdy shoulder to cry on, and a fierce, protective energy that actively helped keep the encroaching darkness of despair at bay. Joining Ashley in this dedicated vigil of friendship was Grayson, whose incredibly calm and steady demeanor provided a much needed grounding counterbalance to the highly charged, emotional atmosphere of the house. Together, Ashley and Grayson formed an impenetrable, loving shield of support, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that family is not just about blood relations, but about those who steadfastly stand by you in your darkest, most terrifying hours. As the grueling weeks slowly dragged on, the intense undercover operation finally reached its explosive, highly anticipated climax. The air inside the syndicate's compound was incredibly thick with tension, the deafening sound of shouting and rapid gunfire echoing through the massive warehouse as the heavily armed authorities aggressively closed in on their targets. It was the absolute moment of truth, the thrilling culmination of months of dangerous deception and constant peril, and Jacob was fiercely determined to see it through to the bitter end, no matter the personal cost to himself. In the chaotic, swirling midst of the violent takedown, an unexpected tragedy suddenly struck. As a cornered, desperate syndicate enforcer made a wild, reckless bid for escape, a chaotic and brutal physical scuffle immediately ensued, and a stray, high-caliber bullet violently grazed Jacob's arm, viciously tearing through his flesh and muscle. The sharp, searing pain was absolutely immediate, a blinding, white-hot flash of pure agony that threatened to instantly drop him to his knees in the middle of the active firefight. However, entirely fueled by surging adrenaline and the desperate, overwhelming desire to finish the demanding job so he could finally go home to Naomi, Jacob forcefully pushed through the debilitating pain. He absolutely refused to stand down, completely refusing to let the painful injury compromise the success of the mission, demonstrating a level of sheer grit and unwavering determination that was nothing short of truly heroic. The stray bullet had miraculously missed his major arteries and vital bone structures, resulting in a severe, jagged flesh wound that required a significant number of painful stitches and heavy, restrictive bandaging to heal properly. The long, terrifying nightmare was finally over. He was finally, unequivocally, going back home. The long journey back was a hazy blur of official debriefings and mandatory medical checkups, but his racing mind was focused solely on one single beautiful thing: Naomi. Back at their quiet, peaceful house, it was a completely unassuming, silent evening. Ashley had just left a few moments prior after dropping off some warm dinner, and Grayson was scheduled to check in later that night to make sure everything was secure. Naomi was sitting alone in the dimly lit living room, a half-read, forgotten book resting idly in her lap, her tired eyes staring blankly at the silent, dark television screen. The crushing, heavy weight of the endless waiting had settled deep into her weary bones, a chronic, persistent ache that she had almost grown entirely accustomed to enduring. Then, the unexpected sound finally came, a heavy, hesitant, unfamiliar knock at the solid wooden front door. It was not the familiar, rhythmic, cheerful tap of Ashley, nor was it the solid, predictable knock of Grayson. It was entirely different. Naomi's heart completely stopped in her chest. A massive, overwhelming wave of sheer panic mixed with incredibly fragile, desperate hope violently crashed over her as she slowly, shakily rose from the comfortable couch, her weak legs visibly trembling with every single step she took toward the dark entryway. When Naomi finally summoned the courage to pull the heavy front door open, the entire world seemed to instantly stop spinning on its axis. standing right there on the wooden porch, beautifully bathed in the soft, warm, welcoming glow of the exterior porch light, was Jacob. He looked significantly older, visibly worn down by the immense, crushing weight of the past few terrifying months. His dark clothes were heavily rumpled and stained. His handsome face was deeply lined with profound exhaustion, and his left arm was heavily wrapped in thick, pristine white bandages and securely fastened in a sturdy, dark medical sling. For a terrifying fraction of a second, Naomi absolutely could not breathe. The shocking, sudden sight of his severe injury sent a sharp, agonizing jolt of pure terror straight through her fragile heart, a vivid, undeniable physical manifestation of the extreme, lethal danger he had just survived. But as her wide, tear-filled eyes slowly moved from his heavily bandaged arm up to his tired face, she clearly saw the familiar, deep, and entirely unwavering love shining brightly in his exhausted eyes. The initial paralyzing shock instantly dissolved into a massive, unstoppable flood of overwhelming, completely unfiltered emotion. Hot, fast tears immediately spilled over Naomi's pale cheeks as a choked, desperate sob violently escaped her trembling lips. She absolutely did not care about the grime and dirt on his ruined clothes, nor did she care about the terrifying danger that had just finally passed them by. She only cared with every fiber of her being that he was standing right in front of her, alive, breathing, and finally home. With a desperate, practically breathless, joyful cry, she launched her entire body forward, throwing her arms tightly around his neck, being incredibly careful, but not too careful, of his injured, bandaged arm. Jacob let out a long, shaky, emotional breath, a beautiful sound that was half joyous laugh and half relieved sob as his strong, good arm wrapped incredibly tightly around her narrow waist, forcefully pulling her flush against his broad chest. He deeply buried his tired face in her soft hair, desperately inhaling the sweet, incredibly familiar, and comforting scent of his true home. In that incredibly poignant, beautiful moment on the front porch, the long, agonizing months of painful separation, the terrifying, deafening silence of the burner phones, and the constant, suffocating fear of loss were entirely, permanently washed away by their tears. Naomi was crying uncontrollably, but a radiant, incredibly beautiful, and genuine smile broke brightly through her falling tears, completely illuminating her face with pure, unadulterated, overwhelming joy. She gently pulled back just enough to tenderly frame his exhausted face with her soft hands, lovingly tracing the deep lines of his fatigue with her thumbs, silently, fiercely promising him that she would help him completely heal from this ordeal. Jacob leaned heavily into her gentle, loving touch, his bright eyes reflecting a profound, endless gratitude and a silent, unbreakable vow that he would absolutely never leave her in the terrifying dark again. As they held each other tightly in the quiet night, the stark, white, bandaged arm serving as a constant, physical reminder of the deadly perils they had successfully survived, they both knew with absolute certainty that their incredible bond had been severely tested by fire and had miraculously emerged stronger, more resilient, and more deeply connected than ever before.